Hello, everyone. Welcome to Module 9. In this module, we're going to focus on platform strategy and how brands decide where they should actually have a social media presence. Throughout the semester, we've talked about identifying audiences, setting objectives, creating shareable content, working with influencers, and developing branded video. Now we're bringing those ideas together to think about where that content should live. We'll look at several major social platforms, including Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Snapchat, TikTok, and YouTube. But rather than simply reviewing the features of each platform, we're going to focus on the strategic role each one can play. The central question for this module is not which platform is the most popular. Instead, it's which platform make the most sense for this brand, this audience, and this objective. I want to begin with a distinction that is really important in social media marketing. The platform is not the strategy. Saying that your brand needs an Instagram account, a TikTok account, or a YouTube channel does not tell me what your strategy is. Those are simply places where communication can happen. Your strategy explains who you're trying to reach, what you're trying to accomplish, what you're going to communicate, and how those pieces work together. This is why I don't want you to begin a social media plan by saying, our strategy is to use Instagram. Instead, tell me what communication problem you're trying to solve. Once we understand that, we can determine whether Instagram or any other platform is an appropriate channel for solving it. Now, some of the information here should look familiar because it connects directly to the work you've already done in this course. Start with the audience. I can't emphasize that enough. Who are you trying to reach? That's the big picture question. Then go a little deeper and think about their behavior. Which platforms do they actually use? And more importantly, how do they use them? Next, return to your objective. What do you want this audience to know, feel, and do? Only then should you decide what role a particular platform should play. Two brands may be trying to reach very different audiences, so they shouldn't automatically have identical platform strategies. Even two brands using the same platform may use it very differently because their objectives are not the same. There can be pressure for brands to establish a presence everywhere, but more platforms don't automatically produce better results. Every additional platform requires resources. Someone has to develop the content, respond to the audience, monitor conversations, evaluate performance, and maintain the account. A neglected social media account can actually communicate something negative about a brand. So I would rather see a brand maintain a strong strategic presence on three platforms than have weak, inconsistent accounts on seven. Think about focus, quality, resources, and purpose. Every platform in your strategy should have a reason for being there. Before recommending a platform, I want you to evaluate it using several criteria. First, audience fit. Are the people you're trying to reach actually there? Second, objective fit. Can the platform help you accomplish what you're trying to achieve? Third, content fit. Do you have the ability to create content that works naturally within that environment? You also need to think about discovery. How do people find content there? Is it primarily feed based, search based, recommendation based, or some combination. Then consider resources. Can your organization realistically maintain this platform? And finally, measurement. Can you identify meaningful indicators that will tell you whether the platform is contributing to your objective? These questions give you a much stronger basis for recommending a platform than simply saying that it has a large number of users. We also need to recognize that AI is changing the way social platforms operate. One major area is recommendation. Increasingly, platforms are using AI driven systems to determine what individual users are likely to find interesting or relevant. This means audiences are often discovering content from accounts they don't already follow. AI is also changing search and discovery as platforms become better at interpreting content and predicting user interests. From the brand side, AI can support brainstorming, drafting, creating variations of content, analyzing performance, and adapting material for different platforms. But I want to emphasize AI can support execution, but it doesn't replace strategy. You still need to understand your audience, make decisions about objectives, protect the brand voice, evaluate the quality of what is produced, and determine whether the content actually makes sense for the platform. Let's begin our platform discussion with Instagram. Instagram can play an important role in visual brand building. Brands can use images and video to establish a recognizable identity, communicate their personality, and tell stories about their products, employees, customers, or communities. But visual consistency doesn't mean that every post needs to look identical. The goal is for the overall presence to feel intentional and connected to the brand. Instagram is also a community environment. Brands can interact with audiences, encourage user generated content, collaborate with creators, and participate in conversations. So don't think about Instagram simply as a place to display attractive pictures. Think about how visual communication, storytelling, and community can work together strategically. Within Instagram, different formats can serve different purposes. Reels may help with discovery, entertainment, or demonstrations. Stories can be useful for timely communication, interaction, and behind the scenes content. Carousels give brands more room to explain something or walk audiences through information. User generated content can help build community and credibility, while creator partnerships can introduce the brand to relevant audiences. The important lesson here is that even within a single platform, we still need to make strategic choices. Don't choose Reels simply because Reels exist. Ask what you're trying to communicate and which format gives you the best opportunity to do that effectively. Hashtags have been part of social media strategy for a long time, but I want us to move away from thinking about them as a formula. You may have seen advice telling you that you need exactly 5 hashtags, 10 hashtags, or some other magic number. That's not a particularly useful strategic approach. Instead, think about what the hashtag is doing. A branded hashtag can connect content to a campaign. A community hashtag may connect the brand to a relevant conversation. Other hashtags may provide context about the subject of the content. The important consideration is relevance. Using a large number of unrelated or overly broad hashtags doesn't necessarily make content more discoverable or effective. So think strategically about context and audience rather than simply counting hashtags. Let's turn our attention to Facebook. Facebook can still serve useful strategic purposes, particularly when the brand's audience and objectives align with the platform. A page can provide an official presence for an organization. Groups can be particularly useful for building communities around shared interests or experiences. Events can support both online and offline activities. Facebook can also function as a customer communication channel where audiences ask questions, seek information, or interact with organizations. The question is not whether Facebook is universally good or bad for marketing. The question is whether Facebook provides something useful for your particular audience and strategy. We also need to distinguish between organic and paid distribution. Posting something organically doesn't mean every follower will automatically see it. Platforms determine what appears in individual feeds based on a variety of signals and predictions about relevance. Organic content can help brands maintain relationships, communicate regularly, and build community. Paid distribution gives brands another option. It allows them to extend selected content to particular audiences based on their campaign strategy. But paid media shouldn't be used as a substitute for weak content. If the message isn't relevant or valuable, spending more money to put it in front of more people doesn't solve the underlying problem. Paid distribution should amplify a strong strategy. LinkedIn has a different context because professional identity is central to the platform. For organizations, LinkedIn can support thought leadership by allowing executives, employees, and subject matter experts to share knowledge and perspectives. It can also support employer branding. Potential employees may use the platform to learn about an organization's people, culture, values, and opportunities. For business to business organizations, LinkedIn can be particularly valuable because professional decision makers and industry communities are already there. Employee advocacy can also extend a brand's reach. Sometimes audiences may respond differently to information shared by a knowledgeable employee than to the same message coming directly from a corporate account. Again, the platform's context shapes how we use it. At the same time, Pinterest is interesting because we shouldn't think about it exactly the same way we think about a traditional social feed. People often come to Pinterest because they're planning something, searching for inspiration, exploring possibilities, or trying to solve a problem. That creates an important element of intent. Someone may be planning a wedding, redesigning a room, looking for recipes, researching fashion, developing a fitness routine, or considering a future purchase. For brands that fit those behaviors, Pinterest can become a discovery tool that connects useful visual content to an audience and potentially moves that audience toward a website or another action. Another important characteristic of Pinterest is the potential lifespan of content. Some social media posts disappear from attention relatively quickly. Pinterest content can sometimes continue being discovered because people are actively searching and planning. This makes evergreen content particularly useful. Tutorials, product ideas, inspiration, guides, recipes, and other useful visual content can continue providing value well beyond the date when they were originally posted. This reinforces something we've discussed throughout the course. Don't think only about what will generate attention today. Sometimes the better strategic question is, what can we create that will continue being useful to our audience over time? Snapchat gives us another type of communication environment. The more immediate and ephemeral nature can support content that feels timely, candid, or less polished. Brands might use that environment for behind the scenes access, direct audience interaction, or augmented reality experiences such as lenses. But Snapchat is a good example of why audience research matter. You shouldn't recommend Snapchat simply because it's a social platform. You need evidence that the audience you're trying to reach uses the platform in ways that support your objective. If the fit isn't there, choose another channel. TikTok demonstrates how much social media discovery has changed. People don't necessarily have to follow a brand or creator before encountering their content today. Recommendation systems can expose content to audiences based on predicted interest. TikTok also operates as a cultural environment. Trends, sounds, creators, communities, humor, and participation all influence how content circulates. Increasingly, people also use TikTok to search for information, recommendations, demonstrations, and answers. But brands need to be careful about forcing themselves into every trend. Cultural relevance comes from understanding the audience and community. It doesn't come from copying something simply because it happens to be popular. We spent some time on video in Module 8, so here I want you to think specifically about the strategic role YouTube can play within a platform mix. YouTube gives brands opportunities for both depth and discovery. Help content can answer questions and solve problems. Longer videos can support detailed explanations, interviews, demonstrations, and storytelling. Because YouTube also functions as a search environment, useful content may continue being discovered long after it was originally uploaded. And shorts provide another option for shorter, more immediate content. So a brand doesn't necessarily have to choose between short form and long form video. It can use both strategically for different purposes. Now, this is going to be one of the most important concepts in the module. Stick with me. A brand can have one campaign strategy without creating identical content for every platform. Imagine one campaign. On Instagram, you might emphasize the visual story and community interaction. On TikTok, you might develop a more participatory or discovery oriented execution. On LinkedIn, you might focus on expertise or the professional implications of the campaign. Pinterest might emphasize inspiration and planning, while YouTube provides room for a deeper story. The strategic idea remains connected across all of these channels, but the execution changes based on how people use each platform. It's important to keep in mind that cross platform does not mean copy and paste. Repurposing content can be efficient, and I'm certainly not saying that brands need to create everything from scratch for every platform, but repurposing should involve adaptation. Keep the core message, brand identity, and campaign objective consistent. Then consider what needs to change. Maybe it's the format, length, tone, opening hook, caption, or call to action. This is all an area where AI can be useful. AI tools can help generate different versions or adapt material for different channels. But simply asking AI to resize or rewrite something doesn't guarantee that the new version makes strategic sense. AI can help with the adaptation. You still have to make the strategic decision. And once you've selected your platforms and published your content, you need to evaluate what happened. The appropriate metric depends on your objective. Don't select a KPI simply because a platform conveniently displays it on a dashboard. Go back to the objective and ask, what evidence would actually tell us whether we succeeded? Let's bring everything together. Start with the audience. Ask, who matters to this brand? Then return to your objective. What are you trying to accomplish with that audience? Next, determine the role of each platform. Why does this particular channel belong in the strategy? Then, think about content. What can the brand realistically create that fits both the audience and the platform? Consider resources as well. Can the organization sustain this presence effectively? And finally, determine how success will be measured. The main takeaway from this module is that you don't need to be everywhere. You need to be where your audience and your objective give you a strategic reason to be.